I hope these Pendleton pillows make it into the shot. They were like a birthday gift from my husband, and I love them.
We'll make sure. It's like flip, you know the cut? There we go. Hey everyone, this is Alex, and I'll be interviewing her about her life as well as an awesome initiative that she's started. So I guess we'll start by, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Alex Qin, and I'm originally from France. I moved to the United States about 8 years ago for college, where I started studying computer science, and after graduating, entered the world of tech as a software engineer. Shortly after that, I became really passionate about education and started teaching as a volunteer at first, and then eventually ended up leaving my full-time programming job to join a nonprofit called the Code Cooperative, called Coalition for Queens, where I was the curriculum director of a free programming bootcamp for adults from underrepresented backgrounds in tech. That was a really great experience, and after that I decided I wanted to widen my impact on education, which is why I decided to join Skillshare, which is a continuing education platform for creatives and entrepreneurs, and basically anyone who wants to learn new skills. So now I lead the web engineering team there. And I recently started a new educational program called the Code Cooperative, in which former inmates learn to code as a means to create social change.
That is so awesome. It was like a huge list of awesome things, and that's why I wanted to interview and talk to you about all of that stuff. So my first question for you is, what got you interested in tech or software engineering, and just this general field?
Yeah, I started college wanting to be an astronaut, and so I started the engineering program at my school, and one of the requirements was intro to programming, and I never really heard of it. I kind of knew what the internet was, but that was it. And so I took intro to programming, and I immediately fell in love with it. I felt like I could be creative and analytical all at once, and I felt like I'd finally found an art form through which I could express myself, because I had previously not been very skilled at other forms of art. So yeah, I fell in love with it immediately and just kind of decided to major in computer science right then and there.
Awesome. I mean, that definitely sounds like the reason why I did, I decided to major in computer science as well, is because even if you're not doing anything visual, it still feels very creative, because you can think of all of these awesome ways to organize your code, and it's just there's just limitless possibilities. So it definitely parallels reasons why I did computer science as well. So another question is you've done so many awesome things. You're now in a role where you're leading a team and doing all these awesome educational initiatives. One question I have for you is, what is your proudest moment in your career thus far, either directly related to in a job role, or the side things that you've been doing?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I feel like all my proudest moments don't really have to do with writing software per se, but rather the impact that I've had the opportunity to have on other people in the industry. Immediately when you ask me that question, I think of the time that I gave a young woman her first raise, who really deserved it, or the time so cool. that I got to hire 2 women away from a job that I had before that I knew was not a good environment, and they joined my team and have been happy there for a long time. But I think that my proudest moment is probably when I was working at Coalition for Queens, the programming school that I mentioned earlier. it's a free programming school for adults from underrepresented backgrounds in tech, and so the class was 50% women, 50% Black and Latino, 50% immigrants, 50% people without four-year college degrees, and the average income of the class coming in was about like $20,000 a year.
Oh wow!
And like I was hired to basically kind of like build out the curriculum for the first cohort, and so it was like a really big kind of bet that the organization placed on me, and I like had a lot of help from a lot of amazing people. But when after the first cohort graduated and 6 months out, when I found out that like almost all of our graduates were getting like amazing jobs at like Pinterest or OkCupid or Spotify as like full-time software engineers, like those moments were probably like the proudest of my career.
That is like really cool because it's like a super direct effect on someone's like entire life, because you said they came in with 20,000.
Well, that was the average, so some were making less, more.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I had a student who had not graduated high school and who'd been a mechanic for a really long time, and he was super sharp. Immediately when I first met him, I could tell he was going to be like very skilled at programming, but his confidence was so low because he just like hadn't been in a classroom setting in so long. And just seeing him like grow and like gain such a passion for software engineering and become an Android engineer was just like,
oh my god,
very awesome.
That is so cool. And like I definitely do think that like so I guess the way to phrase it is like, I think interacting with so many different kinds of people, like mainly via the internet, is pretty interesting, because it's like you realize how much of this all depends on circumstance, and like being able to lift someone up like that much is so amazing. Another thing is that like it really is amazing how helpful like specific communities are. So for instance, before I applied for the various jobs that I did, I directly like contacted a woman that I knew there to be like, hey, like, does this place seem like a good place for me to work? And things like that. So I'm like so grateful for like everyone that like helps people out, and hopefully I'll be able to like pay that forward like directly.
You're already doing that with Lady Storm hackathons, are you kidding?
No, yeah, it's like one of those like, I feel the internet is just so weird, but maybe I'll definitely talk about it in like a whole video one day, like about like my feels about Lady Storm hackathons. That's a online community that I started in college for women who want to go to hackathons, and like the goal is to close the gender gap there and make it a more inclusive environment. However, it's like kind of evolved into this like college new grad demographic where people just sort of like pour their questions. So a lot of the content, most of the content is not about hackathons at all. It's like really funny how that like turned out.
Yeah, it's just a really supportive community of, I'd say, like people from all genders, like mostly women.
Yeah.
But there's definitely lots of like allies or like non-gender conforming folks also.
Yeah.
Who are just like super helpful and like there to just lift each other up. It's an awesome community, and I'm like in it and active in it. You know, I love it.
Yeah, the internet is an amazing place.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That's
really
true.
cool.
Sometimes.
If you force it to be an amazing place in one specific community, it will be.
That would be another really good video to talk about, just like how to create like safe online spaces and stuff like that.
Actually, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I will write that down in this notebook right here. So another question I have is, and I guess I can help provide my advice as well. So this is going to be another whole video. So many video ideas coming out of this video. Video inception. Is what advice would you give to new grads entering this industry?
Yeah. I'll try to give advice that's like not advice that I hear a lot.
Yeah.
So I have, I think, 3 pieces of advice that I think are really important. The first one is that once you enter the tech industry as a professional, it's really important that you use your powers for good. You really have a responsibility when you're a tech worker with a disposable income, with the time and the specialized skills that you have, and like if you're able-bodied to really contribute some of those resources to the greater good. But also, you have a responsibility to, like, you can work in tech and you can love working in tech, but you also need to call can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Or the video video.
Absolutely.
Great. To like call the shit out that is wrong with the tech industry and to like work to change it. So definitely, like, first piece of advice is using your privilege as a tech worker for good. The second piece of advice I would give is, like, I think, and this is a great thing about people who work in tech, is their first instinct is to really like want to solve the world's problems, like what can I do to make the world a better place? Like, what is going to be the new thing that is going to help people? And I think before you rush to like the what, I think what's very important is understanding what the problems really are, and kind of working to listen and like learn from the communities that you're hoping to serve, rather than like immediately trying to solve a problem. And then the third piece of advice I would give is that the thing that's really helped me most in my career in terms of advancement and opportunity have been like kindness and authenticity, and just like taking that extra effort to like help someone out when they need it, and to just be like super welcoming. That's like always, come back to me like in an amazing way.
I can definitely attest to that, because like a lot of these opportunities that I've gotten, not necessarily like directly like job opportunities, but like through conferences and things like that, people just like, while I was in college, people were just like throwing me free tickets and like free plane rides, flights, because like it was from the kindness of their hearts, and I'm like so appreciative because it like opened my eyes to like so many new things to try out. Yeah, so the main reason I wanted to talk to you was I wanted to talk to you about Code Cooperative. So if you could tell me more about it, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I know you talked a lot about it already, but yeah.
Sure. The Code Cooperative, so it's an educational program that I started in October, in which former inmates learn to code as a means to creating social change. And we just finished the first session, so we had about like 6 participants, and we met once a week for 2 hours for the first 10 weeks, and then for the following 10 weeks we met once a week for 2 hours, and then on the weekends we would have like office hours at tech companies around the city for 4 hours, and that was really, really helpful for like helping folks with like their homework and just like digging deeper into subjects. And how the Code Co-op started is I partner with this nonprofit organization called the Fortune Society, based in Queens in New York, and they do amazing work. They provide prison reentry services, and they've been around for like 70 plus years. And so the services they provide range from like housing to counseling to like legal services to like educational services, and that's where the Code Cooperative comes in. We basically we started a coding class with them. They never had anything like that before, and their participants had all kind of like been asking after it. So the first session just ended. Part of the program is all of the participants, they receive a laptop, because I firmly believe that in order to learn to code, you need to have access to a laptop all the time.
Yes.
Not just like when you're in class, because like 2 hours a week is just not really enough to learn to code. Ideally you also have access to Wi-Fi all the time, but that's not something that like, the Code Co-op was in a position to necessarily offer everyone. Although it's like generally pretty easy in New York to get like Wi-Fi access. But I have been thinking about like ways to make it easier. Those laptops are donated from like tech companies in New York, like Kickstarter, Donors Choose, Thrillist, Skillshare, where I work. So lots of great support from the community. I can talk more about how it started.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I have been a teacher for a few years now. I've taught lots of different kinds of learners, like children, adults, through like lots of different organizations, Women Who Code, Script Ed, Coalition for Queens that I mentioned before, like Technovation, all amazing organizations. But I found that throughout these teaching experiences, I felt like I was either, providing really in-depth, rigorous curriculum and resources that wasn't really accessible to all. Like maybe it was an amazing program, but like all the kids in the program were like pretty wealthy, or had already like taken like coding classes before. Like they all had like computers, right? Or like, I'd be teaching with an organization where like it was completely accessible and free, but because it was like very volunteer based and like there weren't as many resources, and I felt like we weren't necessarily meeting the students where I like knew that they could go, just because of the like resources of the program. And I felt like there should be a way to teach people to code in a way that's like completely accessible to all, but at the same time that's like very rigorous and leads to learning a lot of like just like high quality skills. And so I started thinking about like, if I were to start a program, what would it look like? I would want it to be accessible to all. I really, we're moving faster and faster in a direction where everything has to do with technology, and the people who are making the technology, they kind of all look the same. And so to me, it's really important that like everyone have access to creating technology. And so I really wanted my educational program to be accessible to everyone. So completely free, like open source curriculum, like offer access to computers. And I also wanted it to be just like rigorous and like meet the goals that the students set for themselves. And so the ways that I'd seen that done well were collaborative environments, kind of like project-based learning, really like once you have the basic skills done, then like really student-led learning, where like the most successful teaching experiences I'd had were when the students were so involved in the project, like they cared so much about it that they just like, had to achieve like over what they thought that they could. And so I wanted to kind of like figure out a way to test my theory of whether or not this would work. And at the same time, I became very interested in issues of like mass incarceration in the United States with the rise in visibility of movements like Black Lives Matter, and like other similar movements. I felt like there's like a big injustice in this country, and I want to find a way to kind of contribute it positively to it. So I figured, maybe I can reach out to some prisons or some nonprofits that work with prisons in New York and see like if there's anything that I can help out with, like maybe teach like a math class or a coding class, and just like learn more about the criminal justice system so that like I can be more informed and like make better decisions as to how to help in the future. And I got in touch with the Fortune Society and asked, hey, like, would you want me to teach a coding class? And they responded and they said yes. Like so many of our participants have been wanting to learn about coding. Wow. And so that's how the Code Cooperative started.
I guess one of my main questions is like, so you said that you taught students in like who had like more wealthier background. What do you think the main difference is in how you change that curriculum to make the content more accessible, like versus with those students that you were teaching?
Yeah, so I think you don't necessarily have to change the curriculum based on the like population that you're teaching, but you should always strive to make the content that you're teaching as like diverse and accessible as possible. So like teaching in many different ways. Like some people are visual learners, some people learn by like listening, some people learn by writing, some people learn by doing, and so you should always strive to present the content that you're teaching in as many ways as possible. Also providing lots of very practical examples, like drawing examples from the lives of the people that you're teaching. Like whenever I teach a new concept, I try to tie it to like, if I'm teaching kids in New York or like adults in New York, like, how the subway works. Like what if you were going to design a programming language that like operated a subway, things like that.
That is so cool.
A great way that you can contribute is donating a laptop for our participants. And also donating money for things like Metro cards for our students to get to and from class, like notebooks, software, things like that. And then also we are looking for tech companies to donate space for us to host office hours. Because one thing that I've seen be really successful with teaching beginners to code is just like showing them what like success looks like. Like, you know, if you stay the course and if you become a software engineer, like this is Google, this is Facebook, like that's always super inspiring.
Definitely. I remember like the first time I visited a Google office, I was like, oh my God, there's so many snacks.
Yes.
And like, I mean, obviously like that's not the best thing about a company, but it was like, I was just mind blown. I was like, there's just so much free food here. It was just like crazy the amount of resources they had. I mean, that's obviously not like every company, but it definitely was pretty crazy.
And spread the word.
Spread the word. Definitely. I'll like link all of that social media stuff. All right. So yeah, it would be awesome if you could talk to me about the goals of the Code Cooperative.
So the Code Cooperative, as I said, is a super new program. And so the goals right now aren't as maybe ambitious as like, you know, jobs as software engineers. But right now the goals of the program are to essentially support the re-entry of the participants. So from prison into like life outside of prison, and to support their personal goals when it comes to technology and learning to code. And so that means something different for every participant. Some participants come in with the goal of, you know, just wanting to learn more about technology. Perhaps they've been in prison for like 20 plus years and they kind of missed the internet and like haven't had that much access to a computer, and so they just want to become more tech savvy. I have a student who, you know, that was the case for him, and having a laptop all the time, he discovered Facebook.
Wow.
And he was able to like reunite with family that he hadn't seen since he went to prison, and like that made a huge impact on his life. So that was really great. Other people come in with goals to like supplement their income with potentially some contract work as a programmer. Some people want to be able to sell their art on the internet. Everyone has a different goal when it comes to coding. Everyone's like super passionate about learning and super grateful for the opportunity. And my goal with the Code Co-op is to just support the students' goals.
That's awesome. And I think that it's like it's very important because it's like the students' own like what they want out of this program.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to see that like crafting the direction of this program.
Another big part of the Code Co-op mission is to kind of teach folks to code as a means to creating social change. And the reason for that is one that I've seen when people are working on a project that doesn't just matter to them, but that has the potential to impact other people's lives in a positive way. They're so much more involved and they're just much more passionate, and then thusly they push themselves and learn so much more. But also because you know, the goal of the Code Co-op is to amplify the voices of folks who have been through the criminal justice system and like share their experiences with the world.
Yeah.
And so all the projects that the Code Co-op students have been working on have to do with the criminal justice system and like issues that they've seen within it and like ways that they think can solve some of these issues. So that's another really big goal of the program. That's awesome.
And you mentioned one participant where he was able to connect with family members via Facebook since he's been in the system for so long. Like, what other changes have you seen with your participants in the program?
Yeah, I've definitely seen everyone become a lot more confident about like using a computer, using technology. Some of the participants who've like been coming really assiduously like to every office hour have like learned how to code like a lot. Like they've you know been building websites, and like you know everyone released their like latest project to the internet, which is cool. Like they learned how to write HTML and CSS using like Sublime Text and like GitHub, which is really neat. But perhaps the biggest change I've seen is just kind of confidence about their place within this like world that is like just so wrapped up in technology in a way that like didn't necessarily exist before, because re-entry from prison is like a long and like difficult process. And added to that, like if you don't feel like you have a place in like the world of technology, if that can be made easier by like understanding how to build technology and how to use it, then that can, you know, give you a lot more confidence and like, you know, definitely help you with finding jobs and like, you know, finding resources, like connecting with communities.
Yeah, I mean, this experience isn't really like, I'm not trying to relate it to like, you know, the very intense experience of like being in the correctional system, but I definitely agree that like tech literacy like changes lives. Like even like watching your grandparents and like teaching them how to use the email, and like my grandparents are like so good at using WeChat, and like our entire family, we like chat on it and send gifts and memes. Like even just like remembering my first experience of like seeing what an if statement can do, just like that level of literacy, and like thinking about how these things are made is definitely like a life-changing experience. And whether that manifests in like becoming a software engineer or just being able to like function within like our now like everyone is like our super tech savvy society, is so important. And I think that what you're doing is super amazing.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I'll definitely link down below all of the ways that you're able to support the Code Cooperative. And thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay.
Yay, we did it!
That was such a nice conversation.